So the Kawasaki Z900 and Kawasaki Z900 RS. I've been asked several times now to talk about these bikes. What are they? What are the differences between them? And what do I think? Well, hang out with me for a few minutes and we're going to get into it. What's up, all my lovely people? It's Alex. So today I've been asked to talk about the Kawasaki Z900, and by that I mean the modern version of the Z900. Obviously there was a very famous Kawasaki Z900 back in the 70s that kind of influenced a whole different motorcycle movement back in the day. But we're not talking about that. We are talking about the modern Z900 because that's what I've been asked to talk about. And it wasn't made necessarily clear whether these people were talking about the Z900 standard or the Z900 RS, and they are actually very, very different. So I'm going to talk about both of them and the differences to make sure everybody understands that. While I'm thinking about it, before I jump into that, if you guys are liking the video, hit like. If you're new here, subscribe, because it tells me what kind of content you guys enjoy, so I keep making that for you guys. So the modern iteration of the Kawasaki Z900, what do we have here? So the Z900 was released in the United States in 2017 and basically was meant to be an update and upgrade from the Z800 Kawasaki had been making previously, which all along was made to be a smaller, more affordable, and more manageable version of a Z1000 for people that didn't necessarily want to go just full bore with that. So the Z900 is a 948cc, which is funny they call it a Z900 because it's a 948. Usually they actually go up as far as what they call a motorcycle. So usually if you have a Z900, they usually would be slightly under a 900cc or something like that. Generally that's what most of these manufacturers do. But with Kawasaki, they actually went up. So the Z900 is a 948cc inline 4-cylinder, water-cooled or liquid-cooled, whatever you want to call it, 6-speed transmission like you would figure, chain drive, basically just your very basic standard naked sport bike 4-cylinder like you would expect from today. Nothing really crazy or innovative there as far as the overall layout of the bike. Liquid-cooled 4-cylinder, fuel-injected, naked design, chain drive, 6-speed transmission, you get the idea. Basically a smaller, less powerful version of a Z1000. Putting out somewhere around 125 horsepower depending on who dynoed it, all that kind of good stuff. With the Z900, just like the Z800 before it, Kawasaki basically had that motorcycle aimed at competing with bikes like the MT-09/FZ09 series from Yamaha. You know, that naked sport bike in kind of the upper middle size range, you know, not crazy displacement, but not real small either, kind of the upper mid-range as far as displacement goes and engine size. And to kind of fit in that less is more naked sport bike, street fighter kind of a category, put out enough power, enough handling and all of that, but try to keep the cost down, because that was the whole idea with FZ09, MT-09 series from Yamaha, right? Was naked sport bike, street fighter, standard kind of riding position, innovative engine design, overall less is more on the motorcycle, and really try to keep the cost down, which is why at least in the United States the FZ09 MT-09 series did so well when it came out, because the overall cost for what you got was just incredible. Great value for the money, right? So Kawasaki was trying to have something to keep me in that category with the Z800, Z900 series motorcycles. The difference is, whereas on an FZ09 or an MT-09 you had a totally new, completely different feeling inline 3-cylinder motorcycle and a whole different layout with the bike. With the Z900, you've still got the same basic inline 4-cylinder, water-cooled layout that Kawasaki is famous for in their naked series Z1000 bikes. Just a little bit smaller and a little bit less to the overall frame and chassis and everything, a little bit lighter weight, little changes like that just to keep the overall cost down. So while they did come out with something that would compete with Yamaha in the price ranging of it, because the MSRP new to new was almost exactly the same, it was within a couple $100 of each other of an MT-09 or anything like that, Kawasaki didn't really do a lot to innovate with the motorcycle, if that makes any sense. So, you know, just comparing like, you know, an FZ09, MT-09 with the Z900, I would probably take the MT-09 or something just because the 3-cylinder everything on it just feels like a very different motorcycle, whereas the Z900 is much more of that classic 4-cylinder naked sport bike feel, like a Z1000, like I keep saying. So I think for you guys, you would like the Z900 if you like that more 4-cylinder type of power delivery, whereas the MT-09 and the 3-cylinders just feel very, very, very different. Now Kawasaki did tune the Z900 for a lot of that lower to mid-range torque and responsiveness, and it is geared that way, but still it is a 4-cylinder inline, water-cooled. It does feel like a 4-cylinder motorcycle overall. So it feels like a less powerful, more manageable, a little bit lighter Z1000 basically. Now let's get into the Z900 RS, because this is where things get a little bit more cool. So the very following year, in 2018, Kawasaki in the USA released the Z900 RS. A lot of people mistake this for basically being a Z900 with just different styling and everything. Could not be further from the truth. The Z900 RS is completely different from the ground up. It shares the same engine, but has different engine internals in it. So same basic engine, but they even rework the internals of the engine. It's a different frame, different chassis, completely different suspension setup. It's geared differently, it feels differently. Aside from sharing the same engine platform, it is a different motorcycle, and it's also considerably more expensive, brand spanking new. The Z900 RS is more of the classic retro styling, but completely modern motorcycle. 948 cc's, tuned differently, so it puts out somewhere more like 110, 111 horsepower, something in that range, again, depending on who dynoed it. Tuned and geared much differently for even more low to mid-range. Very short first gear, but a taller sixth gear on it. So it feels very, very torquey and powerful off the bottom and through the middle, but they gave it a taller sixth gear so you wouldn't feel like you were working it too hard on the highway, so you're actually keeping the RPMs decently low if you're out doing speeds on the highway or something. I think very, very well-rounded motorcycle, actually. I like the Z900 RS a lot more than the standard Z900, which, go figure, it's a lot more expensive. But the Z900 RS was put out much more to compete with something like the XSR 900 from Yamaha, which was, again, the more expensive, more retro styling, upgraded suspension, upgraded everything else bike in the MT-09 line. You just took an MT-09, gave it classic looks, upgraded suspension, etc., made it more expensive. You had the XSR 900. I think the Z900 RS, with the way that it feels and the way that it looks and the way that it's geared, does a much better job of competing with the XSR 900 than the standard Z900 did competing with the MT-09. So I actually really like the Z900 RS. I like the Z900 as well for what it is and for the price point of it, but I think in the price point of a Z900, you're probably better off going with an MT-09, whereas in the Z900 RS, because they're easier to find than an XSR 900, and because Kawasaki put out better rebates and stuff on them and everything, I think a Z900 RS is a really killer choice in that like powerful modern retro kind of a look. And at 110, 111 horsepower, that is absolutely plenty of horsepower for what you're gonna do on the street. And the way that it's geared, it is a blast to ride the thing at low to medium speeds. Big complaint with the Z900 RS though. That Z900 RS throttle is touchy as all crap. And I had a first year Yamaha FZ09 which was known to have a very twitchy throttle off the bottom, which they then fixed with different fuel mapping, etc. in later years. But I had a 2014 FZ09, okay, and that was a very twitchy throttle for most people. That Z900 RS throttle, at least the first 2 years, I've ridden the first 2 years of them, the first 2 years of that Z900 RS throttle, that is a touchy bastard right there. So just be aware of that if you're looking at one, if you want to go ride one or whatever, just be careful off the bottom because it's a very twitchy, touchy throttle, at least the 18 and 19 models were that I have experience with. Other than that, I think the Z900 RS was really cool. Obviously, I prefer that between the two, Z900 to RS version. I like the RS version better just all the way around, but again, it was also, what, $3,000 more, so take that into account. But that's the Z900 versus the RS version. Very different motorcycles. They share the same basic engine, but other than that, very different motorcycles, very different feeling, even though they're both naked, standard seating kind of sport bikes. Retro versus the modern look, different price points, different suspension, different frame, different everything like that. Both really cool motorcycles in their category. In the Z900, I really do think for most people that MT-09 would be a better choice. In the 900 RS though, that's a much more competitive motorcycle for the category. That's it. I hope that's helped. That's the differences between the two of them. Maybe that helps you get a better handle on it. Maybe that answers the question of people who keep asking me about the Z900 series. If it didn't, put your comments and questions below. I'll be happy to dig even further into this topic and answer even more questions if you guys would like. As always, guys, have a great day. Ride safe. I'm Alex. Peace.